Release 411 brought with it the Aegis Idris. Now, the natural competitor to the Aegis Idris in game today is the RSI Polaris, despite the fact that it comes in at about half the size. Now, these two ships do serve very different purposes, or at least intended purposes, but in the gameplay today, they actually are serving very similar purposes, with everyone flying them around as large multi-role capital ships. This is a second release of this video. The first release had some numbers in it that were actually misunderstood, so I wanted to go back and correct and modify those. Let's jump in. Release 411 brought with it the Aegis Idris as part of the Invictus launch. Now, the Idris is a very large capital ship that's designed for 20 plus people to actually fly, with designated roles for each of these people to actually serve. Its only closest competitor in game today is the RSI Polaris. So let's take a comparison between the two and actually see how close these two ships are to one another. Now, it does need to be noted up front here that the Idris is designed to be that large capital ship. The RSI Polaris is actually meant to be a corvette capital killer. These two ships do serve very different purposes in the game, but not today. Today, with the popularity of the two of them, they're all kind of serving that small crew, with a lot of people wanting to experience what it would actually be like to fly as part of a larger crew. That's why this comparison is really relevant to 411 and 411 only, as the two ships will diverge in their paths and purposes as time goes on and other ships are introduced. Let's start out by looking at the design and aesthetic of the two ships in-game today. You never know when one of these ships is going to get a rework like the one that was recently announced for the Polaris. So the Polaris has modern and precise style to it. All of the doors are nicely labeled at eye height. The design colors are clean with a bit of a modern touch to it. The ships have been designed with convenience in mind. For instance, the hangar is directly on top of the cargo bay. Cargo bay has direct exterior access. There's a tractor beam that can actually load things directly from the ground. There's 4 doors to access the hangar from all different angles, including a direct access into the medical bay, direct access into the prison, direct access off into the back in engineering, and moving forward into the ship, you get into the bridge. A bunch of extra doors in there, so it's not super convenient, but it is what it is. There's also a direct elevator that goes from the ground to the hall right behind the bridge. It really is about being practical for a smaller crew of people. Now, the Polaris really reminds me of a ship which was designed for a solo player and convenience, and then kind of scaled up to find purpose for additional people. It's kind of a sleek military corvette, if you will. It's more streamlined and aggressive in design, really balances form and function, and it really kind of maintains that classic RSI look. A lot more smaller and agile in appearance. It comes in at 155 meters long, so it still feels like a capital ship when you're running around it, but it really doesn't feel like a large capital ship, which is why I believe it's actually designated as a corvette capital ship. Now, everything in there is purpose-built for strike ops. The interior really does reflect this. Compact, efficient, and geared towards the interception missions and the quick deployments of everything. The Aegis Idris has a focus on military and industrial aesthetic. That's really classic for Aegis, so it's really not surprising. Now, the Idris-P, which is where this review really focuses on because it's the only one released into the game today, is meant to be a stripped-down version of the Idris-M, which is a military variant. Now, it gives it a really brutalist armored capital ship look, both on the outside and the inside. It retains the bulk and the shape of the destroyer with a large hangar doors and reinforced plating, and it is clearly designed for military purpose, with separation between the duties and areas and people who open the hangars, for instance, and the people who use the hangars. Now, it really has a utilitarian layout. The interior leans heavily on functionality, having crew quarters, hangars, engineering, and the bridge all follow that naval warship style. Really function over fit. It reminds me of an old tugboat that just won't die, but it's been repaired so many times that we've lost count. Now it really has an imposing presence. It's one of those ships that's designed to scare people into running away, more so than actually just destroying them. Although it is pretty good at that too. At over 240 meters in length, it's large, it's intimidating, and it's designed to project power. Its very presence in a fight will make many flee. Its especially when you compare the health pool to that of the Polaris. Now, especially when it's equipped with some of the weapons and the kits that they have released, because it really does step up what the base Idris-P has. The Idris is designed to be a fleet carrier, and it's very specifically made in that direction. It would not be the most convenient ship to try and go do ground missions or visit locations, and it does have a ramp to access the ground, but there's no convenience of elevators or ladders or any other exit other than the hangar itself. So it would be very difficult to go do cargo missions or even bounty missions, as it doesn't necessarily move around as agile as a heavy fighter would, for instance. It's the type of ship that you really will take out, you'll dust off, and you'll fly for larger events or with larger groups of people, such as the Hunt the Polaris event, and then you'll probably end up parking it into your hangar for the next couple of months until there's another mission or purpose to bring it out with your organization. Now, it really does take an army to staff this thing properly, and it has a theoretical minimum crew size of 8 people. Now, again, there are definitely solo pilots out in the verse today, so that minimum crew size is not really fair, but it is what it is. Now, you could probably very comfortably run it with 4 to 6 players at a minimum, but I do suggest running it as part of a larger organization. Now, this could be a great addition to, let's say, a mining or a salvage fleet, because it has the capability to carry a lot of goods, including various different types of ships. I mean, you can throw a Vulture in there without much problem, whereas a Vulture doesn't typically fit in a lot of other ships. Now, when you compare that to the Polaris is kind of designed to be a multi-role ship. It has the 2 different ramps that enter into the cargo from the ground. It has an elevator, means it is probably meant to land. It's very easy to load the cargo on and off with having a tractor beam that goes directly from the ground up into the cargo area and back again, obviously. It's designed to do things like cargo runs, if they're large enough. But its height does make it a little bit inconvenient. I mean, I really don't like loading cargo into the Polaris unless you're using the main tractor beam inside the cargo bay, just because it's such a run to get up there and down. Now, you can easily carry around ground ships. Very quick and easy to deploy it with a nice big ramp on both sides. You can drive on and drive right off again. And it really makes a great addition to salvage fleets and mining fleets, just with the ability to carry the Vulture without too much difficulty. It does fit. Or the Prospector or the Fortune, or whatever ship you want to use for those. And then you still have the separate cargo area that you can go and load cargo into, such as the salvage materials, the RMC, for instance. Now, the Polaris, I find you can realistically do pretty much anything you want with 2 to 3 people. Now, I know that in 4.2, they're actually giving the pilot control of some of the weapons. That, to me, will make it even better to try to solo this ship or to actually fly with a very small crew of people. Now, I believe the Idris, you actually can pilot control the weapons today. So as far as apples and apples go, that's definitely comparable in that regard. Now, when we take a look at the components between the 2 different ships, this is pretty reasonable by comparison, I would say. If you look at the Polaris first off, it has a single capital size shield, single capital size cooler, single capital size power plant, and a single large size civilian grade quantum drive. Now, personally, I do think the Polaris is a little bit underpowered. I think it could benefit from having maybe 2 large power plants as opposed to a capital size, or maybe a mix in there. But I think it is well equipped. Now, if we actually switch over into the Idris components, it has basically 2 capital of everything. So it has 2 capital shields, 2 capital coolers, 2 capital power plants, and a capital grade quantum drive. So it essentially has double the components that the Polaris has, which makes sense. It's twice the size of the ship. It's twice the cost. It is exactly the comparison that I would expect between these 2 behemoths. So now moving on to the comparison between the weaponry and the loadouts between the 2 different ships. Now, I do think that the 2 ships are comparable, not in the sense that they have similar size loadouts, but rather given the purpose and the size of each ship, I think that both of them are very well equipped. Now, I am looking at the base model Idris-P in this case, just because I don't think that it's fair to really look at a kitted version of the Idris against the Polaris. We'll talk about those in a second. So the specific loadouts for each ship is on screen right now, but just from the highlights, the Polaris has a single size 6-man turret on its nose. Compare that to the single size 5 turret on the Idris. The Polaris is actually larger. That being said, the Idris does have more size 5 weapons than the Polaris does, but the Polaris really coming in with a lot smaller weaponry, and the Idris coming in with a lot larger weaponry. Now, that is of no surprise. I mean, the Idris is a larger ship. It's meant to kind of go out there and sit out there for extended periods of time. To me, in this case, I would say that the Polaris is actually a little bit better equipped. Given the fact that it is half the length and half the overall size of the Idris, I think that the weapons are just slightly less, like let's say 25% less, just making up a number. So I think given the ship that it is actually a little bit better equipped. Now, that being said, if a good pilot in either of these would do an amazing amount of damage. The real kicker on the Idris is the add-on kits that you can add. I want to talk for a second about the two different kits available for the Idris as well, because to me, that just makes this a no competition scenario. The Idris K kit actually gives you a giant laser chin weapon, an enhanced size 7 missile launcher nose turret, and 5 additional PDCs, and a special paint job. Now, the Idris T kit, T for torpedo, gives you a giant torpedo launcher in the front. I believe it's size 12. You also get an enhanced size 7 ballistic cannon in the nose turret, the additional 5 PDCs, and yet another unique paint job. So with the addition of either of those kits from the Idris really blows the Polaris out of the water as far as firepower goes. But it should. Remember that the Idris is a ship that's priced at twice what the Polaris is. So I would expect some significant improvements to areas like firepower, for instance. Let's also not forget that the Idris's purpose is to actually go out and fight things. It's meant to be that ship you sit in the middle of a fight and just kind of sit there until the fight is over. The Polaris is really meant to be more of a multi-role ship, a corvette capital killer even, where it's really a run and gun. So you go in, you destroy, and you get out of there. It's not meant to be there for sustained fighting. So again, it does make sense that the Idris wins in terms of armor and shields and firepower, just because of the intended roles that these ships will fill. Now, moving on to the cost and value between the two different ships. Now, to me, this is almost comical to try to compare this and look at the value that these two ships bring, simply because their design purpose is not really available in game today. So the Idris-P comes in at $1,900 US when it's available in limited stock during specific events. Now, it doesn't currently have an in-game price, and to be honest, I'm not sure it ever will. But I would expect it to be very high, the highest in the game, as it is the highest priced ship in the game. Now, as far as value goes, this one is a difficult one. You get a high status symbol by flying around an Idris. A lot of people will think you have a lot of money. Sure, why not? It's extremely powerful, but it's very difficult to actually operate solo, or even with a small org. It's meant to be done as part of a larger organization. Now, the Polaris comes in with a price tag of, I believe it's $850 US, again, when it's available. Doesn't have an in-game price today, but you can actually be awarded it using the Wicklow functionality in the trading. Now, it's a lot of work to achieve that, so it has essentially a pretty high price tag on it. Now, as far as value goes, I would say that the Polaris has a better value than the Idris, but it's still comical to look at a value on these types of ships. It's far more accessible to get into a lot of other areas. You can go and run every mission type in the game with the Polaris. It's got very high firepower for the price, and it does require a smaller crew and a lot less logistics. Owning an Idris means that you're going to be a logistics manager. You need to organize your crew, you need to make sure that people are sitting in the seats they actually should be, and it's less about getting the mission done and more about organizing it actually happening. That's completely realistic for somebody who would be in charge of an Idris. The Polaris is more of a, hey, let's go do something kind of ship. So I'm going to say that generally the Polaris is going to win in the cost and value category, coming in at less than half the price, having more casual things that you can actually do with it. I'm going to call it a winner. Now, to be honest, you're not really a winner in either of these categories, because For both of these categories, given the gameplay that exists today in game, you're actually better off to go with smaller purpose-built ships. Let's say you're going out mining. Yeah, you could staff a Polaris or you could staff an Idris with 20 people and then a bunch of miners, but those same 20 people could have their own mining ships or salvage ships, and you'd actually end up making a lot more money staffing and running through the gameplay that way. So I don't really think that it's fair to look at value on these ships, even though I think you need to consider it. To me, the real value in both of these ships is being able to play with that organization and actually really kind of go through and do the role-playing aspect of it. Because when you actually look at the numbers on paper, let's be honest, neither of these ships makes sense to go out and buy, but they're a lot of fun. Now on to the conclusion. Which ship should you buy and when? Now, to be honest, there is no clear winner between the two of these. I think both of these are amazing ships that serve their intended purpose within the verse. So first up, the Idris. It's a great showpiece warship. It's great for a large organization. Go out and use it as a base to work out of, for instance. It would be a good buy if you wanted to go out and do sustained long-range warfare. That is, you want to stock up in Stanton, go to the other side of Pyro, and go fight an entire organization of other people. That would be a great use for the Idris. Now, it's not really suitable for in-atmosphere operations. You can, but it's the kind of ship you want to land and take off. You don't want to be trying to fight in atmosphere with it. But the Idris is really future-proof. It really is the showcase piece of the game that a lot of people are proud to own because it really represents the game progressing. And it really represents the game moving to a level that a lot of people never thought it could actually get there. Now, it is very future-proof. A lot of the gameplay that will come into the game, the stuff that we haven't seen yet, the stuff designed for capital ships, the Idris will be able to handle this without a problem when the time comes. So if you're looking for a ship that will age very well, I think that the Idris is a very good choice there. Now, looking at the Polaris, to me, this is a ship that I find to be a lot more practical. It's a ship that's going to get a lot more use in my hangar, because I'm going to go out and I'm going to fly it to the next supply and die mission. I'm going to go and fly it to the align and mine missions. I'm going to use it constantly, even when it's not really the design ship for the purpose at hand. Now, I do like the more modern aesthetic, but that's my personal preference. Now, as far as combat goes, it is designed to be more of a hit and run kind of ship with quick attacks. It's designed to be that capital killer ship. It's designed to kind of fight its way to the capital ship, destroy it, and then get out of there. It's not meant to take large swarms of other enemy ships, especially if they're of a decent size. So, question is, what do you buy when? So I'm going to say if you're part of a large organization and your organization really wants to do a lot of role-playing type gameplay, and again, you're a large organization that can easily staff a 25-person ship, the Idris is the one that's going to be for you. Now, when you have that many people on there, obviously you're going to have multiple different transport ships and potentially fighters, and it's going to be a real coordination effort to get this thing out. But if that's something that you're interested in, the Idris would be a great showcase piece in your hangar today. Now, looking at the Polaris, I think the Polaris is a kind of ship that you buy if you want to go out and play with a couple of friends. I know it's a capital ship. I know you should be staffing it with a lot more people than a couple of people. But realistically, in the game today, it's very easy to staff the Polaris with a couple of people and go out and have fun on just about any mission. So if you're looking for that experience of a small org gameplay, and you don't want to spend a lot of your time coordinating other people to try and get people in the right places at the right time, I strongly suggest looking at the Polaris in that case. Or honestly, they're both great ships. Just go buy them both. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Have you bought either the Idris or the Polaris? What do you think of it? Let me know what your choice between the two of them would be, even if you haven't purchased it. Thank you for tuning in to another random comparison video between two ships within Star Citizen. One final apology for the original version of this video. I actually used the turret sizes as opposed to the weaponry that was placed in the turrets. That led to some very misleading numbers. So again, my apologies. This has been Citizen Chaos, and I'll see you in the verse.